Welcome back to 12 Rants of Christmas, guys. I'm Jared Leggett. Today I'm wearing Nightmare Before Christmas jumper. It's the last time I'm going to share my fits with you guys because I'm going to just start cycling the 4 Christmas jumpers I have. But today I want to discuss people who may be considered nightmares, especially if you work in a customer face area at Christmas time. I want to discuss being a Karen, aka how to make sure you bond co-workers and hatred of you in their work group chat. Fun fact about me that I don't ever really get to talk about publicly: I am a world class complainer. Okay? No messing. I have had long standing disputes with big payouts with companies who are determined to dig in. I've been asked to sign NDAs by companies that you've definitely heard of. No, I'm not going to tell you that's what an NDA is because I've checkmated them so hard, and I've actually got to help big apps develop their products and been rewarded for doing so. And I'm going to share how I did so on this show. On the other side of the coin, as a person who runs my own events and media business, well, it's now more of a fun hobby these days, but I still run it as a business and as a professional in low blows. Let me tell you a little secret. I actually love when people complain. I mean, obviously, I don't want anyone who ever attends a low blows event to ever need to complain. I always want everyone to be happy. But whenever you try and do something to please a lot of people at the same time, there will be the odd time where something doesn't go perfectly along the way. But why I appreciate people who complain is, I want to put it this way, and this is what I'll kind of tell people when I'm training them in how to manage complaints and customers. If someone you just met does something that really annoys you, you're probably not going to bring it up because it'll just be an uncomfortable conversation and you don't really care about or know that person. So you'll just take a mental note to just stay away from them and not speak to them again ever. But if you do decide to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation, taking time to speak up and potentially have a conflict to iron this out because it's bothering you, the reason you're probably doing so is because you actually care enough to want to fix the situation. So to me, as someone who runs my own business, when people do take time to communicate with you as a business, 90% of the time, they're the people who care and want to repair the relationship they have with you so they can continue to be your customers and your most loyal attendees. Sure, there is the occasional mental error, and I say the word Karen because it's a funny colloquialism for people who complain that we're all familiar with, but often that's just not the case, even if we tend to react that way, because it can be difficult to be on the receiving end of a complaint. And I train people who work for me to change their own mindset about this and empathize that even if they're frustrated or angry, it's more often than not coming from a good place of wanting to fix things. And when I am a consumer and step into that role and need to complain, that's the mindset that I approach. I'm fine paying fair prices for products, services, or experiences, but I do want to get them and get my money's worth. And I also understand that stuff can happen that isn't expected, but if it has seriously impacted me, I want the business to make it right. And if they're a good business who's open to learning, I want to positively engage with them to be able to better cater their product or service or whatever to me and customers like me. If they're not and they decide to be difficult, well, there are always ways they can get you what you want regardless, and I'm going to discuss that too. But first off, just to be clear, what this is not is a way to cheat and swindle companies into getting their products for free. So if that's what you're looking for, please go somewhere else. But if you have been hard done by and frustrated and not being able to get your way, I'm going to give you some good tactics to make sure that in the future you do get looked after one way or another. And also I'm going to give some examples of situations, but just to call out right here, and please don't ask me, I'm not going to name and shame companies here. I'm just going to give you general outlines. Step one in being a good Karen is be a good customer. In an old job where I worked, the manager told me something that did always stick with me after I had a rant to them that you always do when you're in customer facing roles. You had a rant about a customer who I felt was being unreasonable at the time. I said, it's our job to do this and it's their job to meet their end of the bargain. And they stopped me at that point and they said, stop. They're the customer. They don't have a job. You're the one being paid in this interaction. They don't have to do shit. You have to fix it for them because that's what you're paid for. it stuck with me, and kind of years later, as I've grown in kind of experience and I've grown to kind of manage people and I have a lot of experience behind me, I agree and disagree to a point. In the interaction, if you're the one being complained to, you should never ever blame the other person. You should always remember that you're the person in the interaction being paid, and they're taking time out of their free time that they probably rather spend doing anything else. Most people don't want to complain. They don't want to have to call up. They don't want to have to write in. They don't want to have to have a face-to-face confrontation. They'd rather be doing something else, and you're being paid to deal with it. That's your job. That's what the money's for. But from a consumer standpoint, it's actually beneficial for you to be the best customer possible, because the quickest way to get your issue resolved is to just work with the person whose job it is to try and help you. An important thing to remember that we all know, but we sometimes forget, because maybe in a situation like this we're angry, we're frustrated and so on, but 95% of the time the first person you speak to likely isn't the person who caused your issue. They didn't make the decision that you don't like, or they didn't break the thing that broke. And even if they can't fully speak to it, if they do, they probably on some level agree with you, or at the very least can empathize with you. Even if you're frustrated, even if what you've been through is a massive inconvenience, remember that they're there to help, and allowing them to do so quickly while also building goodwill with them, that is important in these scenarios, and people forget that, is going to get your job done a lot quicker. If you go in all guns blazing, if you start saying big words like illegal, solicitors, whatever, you put them in a position of then needing to oppose you and defend their business, and then that just slows down the road to them actually being able to help you. If you're reasonable and you clearly communicate what the issue is, how it's impacting you, and are fair and reasonable in your expectations for how they can fix it and how quickly they can fix it and make things right, then there's a good chance they can and will do just that for you. Let me give you an example of being a good customer and getting amazing results. I subscribe to a sports app for a sport that I like that had just launched a brand new feature that was having major teething issues. It was getting a lot of flack for the issues it was having. Instead of kind of just bitching about it and joining in the flack, I decided to communicate with them. I could have just joined in because the subscription wasn't cheap and the problems made it an absolute pain to deal with, but I sent them an email being calm and asking them what they can do and what they need from me to get it fixed quickest. I sent them some pictures, I sent them some videos of the issue, and all of the steps I tried already, like trying it on different devices or connections and getting the exact same results, so that could allow them to instantly rule all of that out and just get straight to the problem. We got past the whole, is it your problem or is it our problem? And it was instantly clear, this is your problem, this is what I've done, what do you need from me to fix it? They sent me back a questionnaire to fill out with my info, like my device details and so on. A bit of a pain to have to do admin, I know, but I had it back to them within a few minutes because I just wanted to get this solved. And they were really on top of the issue because I sensed it was something they were hearing a lot of noise about. I knew from some of the reaction online and so on, and I felt they were actually appreciative of me being so detailed and able to give them hard details, because then they asked me eventually, after a few emails back and forth, to trial a better version of the app with a fix in for it. The new version ended up working, it got them fixed, and as a thank you, they ended up giving me back my year's worth of subscription, which is amazing customer service, but also a result of me being a great customer. I worked with them, I made their job easier, I made it easier for them to fix the issue instead of just getting fully emotional, and then they made my life easier as a result. And that's how it should go with good businesses. If it doesn't go that way though, step 2, do everything ideally in writing. Look, we all have our preferences for how we interact with businesses when we do. I'm an email guy personally. First off, I just want to be able to fire off a full detailed recap of everything that's happened, the impact it's had on me, the reason I needed it dealt with urgently, and my expectations for how they can fix it. A detailed email gets me past the first 3 stages of questions that I'll have to deal with over the phone, and a good company will just start getting to work on a solution for me. And if they don't, I then have my own record of everything I've said to them and everything they've said back. right in the middle of my Gmail account. I just need to search for it. And they know that too more often than not. So they're probably going to be really careful in how they navigate the situation. If they're not a good business and they push back on you, you got to think of it like a chess match. You don't need to get emotional. You don't need to argue yourself to the point you get wrong, which is something that can happen. You can be such a dickhead that you are right at the start and you become wrong throughout the interaction. You don't need to do any of that. If you paid for something and you haven't got it, they are then on the hook to deliver that. And if they deny that, whatever way they try to deny it, you've got them. And as we'll discuss in a second, I've never, ever had to escalate a complaint beyond dealing directly with the company. But if you do, this is only giving you the ammunition and you're winning. So just sit back and win. Talking on the phone just isn't for me. It's time consuming. I mightn't get someone that understands me or whatever. And it also just isn't advantageous in this situation. You can get things wrong, having to think and react in the minute. You can agree to things that you're unsure of or not get clarity or forget to ask a question. Email gives you that moment to kind of step back, digest what they say, and consider your next move carefully. And if you're right and communicate that effectively, the second that you click send on that email, the other company is then on the clock to make things right. Even if they just ignore or ghost you, every day they do that adds another number to the it's been X days since I let you know this problem, what's going on with it. The main thing to remember though is that any company worth their salt understands all of this and will work with you because of it. So literally step 1 and step 2 should resolve 90% of your issues as quickly as possible. Step 3, quote the company's or industry's policy. And again, when you're thinking of these steps, I'm not saying do all of these in one email. This is like a step-by-step. Try step 1. If step 1 doesn't work, go on to step 2 and then try step 3 if it's not working, okay? Most companies, particularly regulated ones, have to form some kind of policy or code of practice for how they manage complaints, with exception for smaller companies or the likes of worldwide apps who may not be tied to a specific law or country or something like that as well. Still, unless it's an illegal industry, and no, you probably can't speak to your drug dealer's manager, if they legally operate within your country and take money off you, then they have to abide by that country's industry standards and laws. So there will be a set of guidelines somewhere that they have to work within based on the industry. Your first priority, like I said, should be to make the case as a normal customer, as a human, and do all the steps you discussed. You don't have to go in all guns blazing, remember. But if that's getting nowhere, then look at what the company has put out themselves in public as their standards and hold the person you're speaking to accountable for that. Remind them as you're speaking to them, and that will make them work as hard and as quickly as possible for you. The second you do, as soon as you say, this is what you told me you do, this is what your company's standard is, and this is what you're actually doing and how you're not meeting that standard, you won't see it, but they'll go running to their manager for help if they have any sense of self-preservation about keeping their job. These days, I'll kind of do both at the same time. I'll arm myself with the information so I can just keep it in my back pocket if I need it. Now, if I find myself in a situation that I'm unhappy, I will look at the policy. It's usually on their website, and keep it, like I said, in my back pocket for if they fail to meet their own or their industry standard. And usually the process is as simple as outwardly saying, I want to make a complaint, and then there's a process that they need to follow. I'll give you an example here, okay? I went to an event where I was justifiably unhappy for various reasons I'm not going to get into. So the first point of contact was who I spoke to, who was available to me, and it was it was an event steward, okay? Someone just working there. Now, event staff was one of the first jobs that I ever did, which I did for around 3 years. So truth be told, I knew that they'd know fuck all about like the organization and this and that and the other. I didn't get much training beyond basically how to shoo a drunk out of a situation before it escalated, because that's the training I got. So I knew that I wasn't going to hold them like to any kind of higher standard or anything like that. I was sound to them because I knew their limitations, but I still did say the words, I want to make a complaint. And then I took a few photos and I took a video of the situation and asked who the name of the company was that organized the event, because a quick Google search told me that that's what the industry standard would be, and that my complaint was a valid concern that they needed to address if I brought it to them in the moment. They didn't know who the company was or any of that information, but they did hear the words, I want to make a complaint. So they quickly got their manager, who told me the information I needed to know. For what it's worth, just so you don't think I am an actual Karen and a dick, I did go up to the original steward after I spoke to the manager and I said, look, I know this isn't your fault and thanks, I really appreciate you helped me there as much as you could. I'm not giving out to you. You were just the person that was in front of me to speak to. And we were bestos for the rest of the event. They even offered to take a few pictures of me later at certain stages and gave me pro tips for places that I could get better kind of pictures and videos and stuff. It was really cool and a nice turnaround. And again, remember that the first person you speak to isn't the person that's caused your problem. So don't be a dick to them. And if they're uncomfortable or anything like that, or if they don't know, or you put them on the spot or anything, they don't have an answer, just remember to be nice to them afterwards if you get a chance to. So after the event, I was told you need to contact the organizer. So that's exactly what I did. The first thing the organizer said to me, despite me saying that I'd done this in my original email, was, well, should have made a complaint there and then, and we'd have fixed it. Unfortunately, you didn't do that. So basically, tough shit in not as many words. So that made my response really easy, because I literally told them I'd said that. They just ignored it because I think that was just their response when they get these kind of complaints. So my response was, how do you think I knew to get in touch with you specifically? This is exactly what was advised to me by the people you're telling me I had to go to when I did exactly what you've told me to do. I've literally told you that in my last email, which you appear to have ignored. Now, I'm making a formal complaint, which I'd like acknowledged in your next reply, and I've checked your industry standards, so I know you've got X amount of time to give me a satisfactory resolution, or I'll be doing X, Y, and Z. And here is the resolution that I'd like. Their tone, and again, it's when you know how to deal with this, it's not about being angry, it's about knowing your shit. And when you know your shit and how to deal with this and navigate yourself in this situation, one thing you get very used to is the tone shift, because their tone changed instantly. It was an email conversation, but I felt from the response like I could see the person responding to me reading my reply and their face dropping, just thinking, fuck. Because whereas the second before he'd been giving me the kind of snarky, arsey, templated response of I don't give a shit, get fucked, mate. They're probably successfully fobs off 90% of people that come to them around this. Now he replies with, oh, hi Jer, thank you so much for your email, and I'd like to formally acknowledge your complaint. We take this very seriously, and I've raised this issue with a senior manager who will respond to you in X days, as we are incredibly busy at the moment. Chess match. Remember? They'd now given me their SLA to fix the issue, which was longer than I'd liked, but I knew from their industry code that they were entitled to do that. So pick my battles. I knew their long SLA meant that their most likely next move was to hope that I just forget about the whole thing or run out of steam so that they didn't have to address it. And if I waited long enough, I just wouldn't be angry and wouldn't be arsed. So what I did was I just paused my emotions. I went into my Google Calendar. I set a reminder, not for the date that they told me they'd be back onto me, but for 5 days afterwards, because sure enough, I didn't hear from them again. So that meant my next move was simple. Click reply to the email thread when I got the reminder and start with, hi, as you can see from your previous email, you promised me a manager would be in touch with me within at least X days, which would have been X date. It's now 5 days since that, and I'm giving you, which I gave you as an opportunity since you said you were so busy. I've been extremely patient here, but I need a resolution fast now, and now you're in breach of your own and industry's code of practice. If I wanted to at that point, I could have actually rinsed them. I won now at this stage. I got the info, so I knew the rules at the outset of all of this. I communicated exactly as I'd been told to by the industry standard, allowed them time to do their job, and they had failed every one of the deadlines and promises that they'd set. But that continuing it and trying to rinse them and trying to win and trying to humiliate them and get as much as I could, that would have just dragged on as we negotiated kind of extra compensation and this and that and the other. And I decided at the start, I just want my money back. Or I would have even settled, being honest, I would have settled for a partial refund, but I was going for my money back at the very least. Safe to say, that day, I got a reply and I won, which was never in doubt. I knew I'd won and that was what was going to happen. And we were just doing the paperwork at this stage because they knew I'd beaten them too. Which brings me on to my final and perhaps most important point. Step 4, don't overplay your hand. If I was like a lawyer in a cheesy Law and Order style drama, I'd be the type who comes in swaggering, chewing gum like, I've actually never lost a case, see? Then not only have I never lost one of these, I've never even, like I said earlier, had to escalate them legally or to a regulator or anything like that. It'll always end up with me getting exactly what I want from the company I'm looking for it off, even when they're difficult or playing hardball like the previous example. Part of why that's the case isn't because I'm amazing, it's picking my battles. The best way to be a Karen is to not be a Karen. Don't complain about every single minor inconvenience, and don't try and use the complaints process as a way to chance your arm. You're going to end up losing and getting fucked at the end of it all. People can actually get themselves in debt by being so cocksure about their complaining ability that they think, I'm just not going to bother paying for this because I'll end up getting it for free, and then being wrong at the end of it and still being on the hook for the money that they thought they wouldn't have to pay. Sometimes you've actually been wronged, and sometimes you've been mildly inconvenienced, or sometimes you're just creating a perception of mild inconvenience and trying to take advantage of that. Not being able to tell the difference and being really honest with yourself about the situation can cost you a lot of unnecessary time and potentially, in extreme cases like I spoke about, money as well. In worst case scenarios where it's clear your efforts are getting nowhere, you have a number of options available to you. You can go legal, you can go to the regulator if it's an industry that has one, or you can try the PR route of contacting the media or creating a shitstorm on social media. The problem is, like I said earlier, if you overplay your hand and go straight to 10 with these because it's the path of least resistance, you risk fatally undermining yourself. Like, say you ring Joe Duffy on the radio about an issue and the company come back with, this is the first time we've heard anything about it, we gladly get this sorted. They probably won't even let you on the show. You won't get your moment of catharsis. You won't get an opportunity for any kind of extra goodwill or anything like that because you've gone to DEF CON and not tried to let the company resolve it. So now all of your threats ring hollow. But even if they do let you on the air, you look like an unreasonable Karen to the entire nation who can't and shouldn't be taken seriously. Like I said, I've never needed to do any of these, but sometimes if a company is really stonewalling you, the threat of doing so is enough to get over the line. And my last example is a dispute that I had with a bank that lasted over a year over a lost check of a decent chunk of cash that they did not want to pay. I hate carrying around money, or even, and I include cash or check, or having it anywhere but nestled comfortably in my bank account. I don't even carry cash around anymore for that exact reason. So when I lodged this check, I made sure I kept the receipt safe until it was in that comfortable spot and took a photo of it on top of that just in case. I had no idea how much at the time I would need all of this for the absolute nightmare that was about to unfold. I'd asked initially the cashier, just because who lodges checks anymore, and I hadn't in ages, how long the check would take to clear, and was told. No sign of it by the time that they told me. And I let a couple of weeks go by, it wasn't something that I urgently needed, and there was still no sign. A couple more weeks, and now it's time to email it with a picture of the receipt and the receipt number. And the most annoying thing about all of this for me is how I knew from the moment the first person read my email and checked their system that they knew the check was lost. They couldn't find it and they're like, fuck. But they either didn't want to or couldn't admit that it was lost, as then I knew they'd be on the hook. I knew this because, like I said earlier, I checked their laws, checked their code of practice, checked the industry standards, I educated myself. So again, I knew I'd already won and we just had to wait until it got sorted. What followed was basically a year of cat and mouse, allowing them to miss the deadline for the time they said someone would be in touch with me past, wait long enough for it to seem ridiculous and beyond human error or any excuse whatsoever, then get in touch again. Their strategy was essentially the same as the last companies, just wait it out, hope I'd forget, or just say fuck it like so many others would. The odd time I would get someone to reply, they do so by call. I'd ask them if the call was recorded. I'd get their name and ask them if they were managing my case. And no one I ever spoke to was managing my case. It was always someone else, and they never named them or they never did anything. But no one ever just took responsibility for my case. But then they pretend not to know who was managing it or what was happening when I'd ask. And I'm like, I know you have notes on my account. Just read them. Just read them. I know they're there in front of you, and you're like, fuck, I'm not saying that. And that they could see that I'm due. They said to me they could see that I'm due to have someone reach out to me very soon. So I'd say when, and they'd say, oh, soon. I don't have an exact date, but someone's due to call you soon. And I'm like, so does it say on the system soon, or does it have a date, or what's happening there? And they're just like, oh, soon. And then after that, I'd email them a recap of the conversation that we just had, just so there's a written record on file. This was all simple stuff, and it should have worked, but it was enough money that they just said, we'll try wait him out at this stage. So now it was time for me to escalate it. So I asked for a complaint number if this wasn't resolved, and knew that that was the best way to make it resolved in my favor. They'd missed so many of their own deadlines. They'd made so much of a fuck up of anything that now, with a complaint number, I'd be able to go to the regulator and have them start to sniff around as an independent body representing me, that they wouldn't want that to happen. So it was a case of when, not if, I won. But fuck me, they still made me wait for even that, because it took them months more of delay tactics until eventually one day, after reminding them for the third or fourth time, I've asked for a complaint number, you're now breaking the law. A letter arrived with a complaint number, and a full refund conveniently popped right back into my bank account saying they closed the complaint if there was nothing else. Fortunately, it wasn't a case of if I don't have this cash, I can't pay the rent, and the timing that it came was beautiful. It was December 2023. Christmas was paid for. Amazing stuff. And you might reasonably ask, surely if you'd like pulled one of those levers earlier or just gone in guns blazing, you wouldn't have had to wait. And look, you're probably not wrong. I probably could have got it done quicker, but here's what you've got to weigh up. If my main threat is the media or social media, given that I don't have a sob story or the money didn't cause me financial strife, it likely wouldn't have gained any traction. It's just some guy wanting his money, not a very sexy story. So I risked undermining my case if my main threat didn't pan out and appeared full of hot air. If I'd have gone legal, solicitors don't work for free, and I didn't actually need one. Going here with the threat of the regulator was enough to make the company afraid of getting the regulator to dig under the floorboards. But to do so, I needed an official complaint log, and that's what won it for me. So again, didn't even need to do any escalations, just needed the threat of it to do so. And the funny thing is, on one call with one of the more friendlier and helpful staffers who dealt with me, they probably said, and they probably shouldn't have said this, oh, you're in line for a goodwill gesture here, given the mistake. So I actually could have still, after the resolution, gone to the regulator and gone back at them for more. But remember, the message here is pick your battles. Know what you want at the outset, get it, and you'll keep winning, which keep going back for more. That risks me spending more time and energy on this and then ending it all just being pissed off I didn't get what I want, because the risk was I overplayed my hand. I won, I got what I set out for, and so I settled for a happy Christmas on the bank that year. And this is a Christmas gift to you. A 4-step guide on how to win any complaints case where you've genuinely been wronged without needing to escalate it or even pay anyone else a penny. Use it wisely, don't be a dick, be nice to especially the first people that deal with you. They're generally just people doing their jobs like you and me. They haven't been the one to cause it, but go in and do what you need to do. That's been the 12 Rants of Christmas for today. I'm Jer Leggett, and I'll be back tomorrow to discuss Conor McGregor and how he reacted to the biggest court case of the year in Ireland.